Good morning, everybody. I'm going to actually start the meeting. Our chair and vice chair are not in attendance this morning, so I'll start the meeting and do roll call, and then the first order of business will be to elect a pro tem chair for today. And Mr. Cunha has suggested Mr. Williams to run the meeting as that, so we can vote on that or open it up if anybody else is interested in.
I make a motion that Mr. Williams handle this meeting expeditiously.
Okay. Well, in order. First we got to open the meeting and then roll call, and then
open the meeting, take the roll call, and then I'll make the motion.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock, and I will call roll now. Manuel Cunha. Chris McLaughlin.
Here.
Les Clark. Christine Zimmerman. Laura Brown. Donald Horal. Amy Lopes. Here. Roger Hostal. David Fippen.
Here.
Chris Savage. Suzanne Bauer. Derek Williams.
Here.
Casey Austin Tibbetts. John Sanders.
Here.
Kelly Deming. Braden Sanchez.
Here.
Ned Liba. Jamie Eggers. Here. Mary Fast. Scott Robinson. Orchel Cryer.
Here.
Kalish Morrow. Patricia Matthews. Here. Jeff Troost.
Here.
Jose Delgadillo.
Here.
Ben Cantu.
Here.
Richard O'Brien.
Here.
Dennis Madero.
Here.
Okay, and through the chair, we have a quorum. And now I will open it up to any motion to nominate for a chair pro tem.
Well, you did say for the chair, but as I understand it, we don't have a chair.
Not quite yet, yes.
So in light of that, I'd make a motion that Mr. Williams handle this matter as chair.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, what was that?
I'm just going to say I'm here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and Miss Austin Tibbetts is here. Okay, we do have a quorum, so is there anybody who would like to second the motion for Mr. Williams to be chair?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Okay, so now I will do a roll call for electing a chair pro tem for today. Chris McLaughlin.
Aye.
Les Clark.
What's he promising there? Chicken in every pot or anything? Or what's the deal with that? If everybody else likes
thing. What can I tell you?
All right, Mayday, Mayday, you're in.
Okay, thank you. Amy Lopes. Yes. David Fippen.
Support.
Derek Williams.
Yes.
Casey Austin Tibbetts.
Yes.
John Sanders.
Yes.
Braden Sanchez.
Yes.
Jamie Eggers.
Yes.
Orchel Cryer.
Yes.
Patricia Matthews.
Yes.
Jeff Troost.
Yes.
Jose Delgadillo.
Yes.
Ben Cantu.
Yes.
Richard O'Brien.
Yes.
Dennis Madero.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Williams will be the chair pro tem for today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the confidence of Mr. Cunha and of the committee. We'll go ahead and move ahead. I'll just read the obligatory paper here real quick. Good morning. Welcome to our meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Citizens Advisory Committee. We have members participating in person at our offices in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. And before we begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please silence your other communication devices like your cell phones. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. And thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and move ahead to item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. We'll take about a minute and look at them if you haven't already. And when ready, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Looking for a second, please.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Who made the motion in the second?
Sorry, Ben Cantu and Modesto.
Okay.
Les Clark with the, down here in Flyover Court.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and roll call on that for approval.
Okay, Chris McLaughlin,
Yes.
Les Clark,
Yes.
Amy Lopes,
Yes.
David Fippen,
Yes.
Derek Williams,
Yes.
Casey Austin Tibbetts, John Sanders,
Yes.
Braden Sanchez,
Yes.
Jamie Agers,
Yes.
Orchel Cryer,
Yes.
Patricia Matthews,
Yes.
Jeff Troost, Jose Delgadillo,
Yes.
Ben Cantu,
Yes.
Richard O'Brien,
Yes.
Dennis Medeiros.
Yes.
Through the chair, minutes are approved.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 5, chair comments. And since I'm just sitting in, I will pass on chair comments at this time. Just thanking
Actually,
you for your time.
For that was the public
Oh, public
comment,
comments. Thank you very much.
item number 4.
Moving to item number 4, public comments. Do we have any public comments? This time is made available for comments from the public on matters that are not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items that are on the agenda. The public may make comments on each CAC agenda item during the time allowed for public comments. Attention is called to the fact that the CAC is prohibited by law from taking any action on discussion of matters that are not on the agenda. Could we go ahead and see if we have any public comment in the north, please?
There's no public comment in the north.
Any public comment in the south?
No public comment in the south.
Do we have any public comment here in the central district?
Are there any members of the public who would like to comment this morning? No.
Okay, thank you very much.
And-
Hearing no public comments in either of any of the 3 offices. Now we'll move on to item number 5.
There's also no indication of public comment online.
Thank you. Then under chair comments, I just want to say thank you again. I'll do my best to move us right on through everything. And we'll go on to item number 6 now. The executive director, APCO comments.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shiraz Gill. I'm one of the deputy APCOs here, and I'll be giving the comments today. So just some updates from our last governing board meeting. Our governing board accepted and appropriated close to $19 million in additional revenue from the US EPA, about $10 million to replace nut harvesting equipment for low dust nut harvesting operations, $8.5 million to change out open hearth fireplaces with non-certified wood burning devices with new electric heat pumps, gas devices, or certified wood burning devices. And the board also adopted our PM 2.5 contingency package, which Emily will be talking about today, so I won't go into much detail there. For our upcoming board agenda item for June, we'll be taking our 1-hour ozone maintenance plan to our board for approval. And we'll also be accepting and appropriating about $30 million in state vehicle replacement funding and improve the continued implementation of the district's drive clean and the sound walking vehicle replacement and repair programs. We'll also be taking our district leak detection and repair rules for our governing board adoption. And a couple of other big pieces of news is that the Air District launched our zero emission landscape equipment, ZELI for short, grant program to assist landscape maintenance professionals in replacing their older existing gas powered diesel equipment with new electric zero emissions alternatives. And we also launched our Clean Air Rooms program valley-wide, which provides residential air purifiers free of charge to disadvantaged communities to help reduce the harmful effects of wildfire smoke. So those are my updates for today, and take any comments.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from the Central DS?
One more thing, I also want to introduce Jeff Troost from City of Chowchilla. He's here today. There you are, Jeff. If you want to say something, maybe.
Looking forward to.
One thing, just press this the red button right there, and then.
I look forward to learning more about what happens here at the Air Board and being a part of the board here.
We welcome aboard. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, again, any questions or comments for Shiraz from the Central DS? Okay, how about from the South? Okay, how about from the North? Any members from the North? Do we have any public questions or comments from the North?
No public comments in the North.
Any public questions or comments from the South?
No public comment in the South.
Any public comments from the Central District or online?
Any members of the public in Fresno would like to make a comment? No indication in office or online.
Got an easy one today, Shiraz. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 7, update on attainment plans and rules.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. My name is Emily Nealand, and I'm the program manager of our air quality planning team here at the district, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. A few quick updates. Roz already noted a couple of them, but the governing board did adopt the amendments to District Rules 1020, definitions, 2201, which is our rule for new, and modified stationary source review, and Rule 2301, emission reduction credit banking. So that happened since the last meeting that we had with you guys, so that happened in April. As Shiraz mentioned, we also adopted the PM 2.5 contingency measure SIP revision this last month in May. I will be providing a more detailed presentation on that, so I'll provide more details there. For our ongoing projects, we are continuing the rule development process for Rule 4402, crude oil production sumps, and we're evaluating opportunities for a potentially more stringent definition of clean produced water for ponds, and the rule development will be ongoing for the next few months. We're also continuing the development of the revised plan for the 2012 PM 2.5 standard, and we recently held our second public workshop for that project in April. And lastly, wanted to touch on projects similar to what Shiraz had stated for the board meeting next week. So that includes our proposed amendments to our leak detection and repair rules, and our consideration of the maintenance plan and redesignation request for the revoked 1-hour ozone standard. So that concludes my updates. I'll be providing a more detailed presentation on contingency in the next couple of items. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Very concise and to the point. If we could have any questions or comments from the members in the South, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. With regards to Rule 4402, what method are you using? Is it CARB's method to measure what little emissions are on top of these ponds? What method are you guys using in the district?
Thanks, Les. This is Shiraz. I believe the method is defined in the rule itself, and I think it is consistent with what CARB does. We're just talking about the clean produced water ponds there, and the limit in the rule right now is if you're less than 35 micrograms, you're basically exempt from the rule. And those testing have been done for years using the methodology within the rule, and I don't think we're changing that approach.
Yeah, that's the reason I brought it up, because years ago, you know, we actually went out with Air Resources Board and did the measurements, and they were considered insignificant, you know, or de minimis. So I just wondered if you guys come up with some new idea that's that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my
And
question.
we're in the early stages of the rule development. We've done one scoping meeting, right, so far, and I think in the next month or so, we'll be doing a public workshop to share some of our findings, and we'll be obviously working closely with the industry and affected stakeholders through the process.
Thank you.
Any member comments from the north, please? Questions or comments? Don't hear any from the north. Here in the central DS, anybody have any questions or comments for Emily? Hearing none, let's go to public. Any public comments in the south?
No public comment in the south.
Public comments in the north?
There are no public comments in the north.
Any public comments or internet comments in the central district?
Are there any members of the public who would wish to comment at this time? And I see no indication of online comments either.
Thank you for that. Okay, hearing that, then we appreciate the excellent report. We'll move ahead to item number 8, which is a verbal report from CARB, California Air Resources Board, and we're looking for Laura Carr. Is she online?
Morning. Hello, Mr. Chair and CAC members. This is Laura Carr. I'm an air pollution specialist at CARB in the Air Quality Planning and Science Division, and I have 2 updates today for you from the May CARB board hearing. So first, the board approved funding of a research contract with UC Berkeley titled Impacts of Air Pollution Exposure on Life Expectancy Across Multiple Generations, Race, Ethnicity, and Vulnerability Perspectives. The research contract will determine the patterns of PM 2.5 exposure over 30 years within 2 generations in California and the impact on life expectancy. The study will evaluate PM 2.5 pollution in different racial and ethnic and vulnerability groups and census tracts. Execution of this contract will support CARB's work to identify air pollution health impacts and exposure disparities in vulnerable communities to support the development and implementation of regulations, strategies, and programs. This item was being considered at a public meeting to satisfy board approval requirements in Government Code Section 1091 because a board member is affiliated with the UC Berkeley department involved in the contract. All right, and the second item, the board approved amendments to the airborne toxic control measure for chromium electroplating and chromic acid anodizing operations, also known as the chrome plating ATCM. And the chrome plating ATCM includes the complete phase out of hexavalent chromium. Hexavalent chromium is a carcinogen, and it's the second most potent toxic air contaminant identified by the state. It is 500 times more toxic than diesel exhaust. The chrome plating ATCM amendments will eliminate the use of hexavalent chromium in chrome plating operations to reduce health risks in communities located near chrome plating facilities. Reducing emissions of hexavalent chromium will help to address the cumulative risk burden experienced by overburdened and disadvantaged communities. The phase out of hexavalent chromium will protect public health and encourage the development of safer alternatives to hexavalent chromium in chrome plating operations. So just a quick update today. Those were the 2 items, and happy to take any questions or comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. I'd like to make one comment real quick first. I just wanted to point out to the members that if you look at page 2 of the handout, there's a listing of all the different public workshops and meetings for ARB. And I just want to let you know, it's very informative if you have time to go online and click on the more information buttons on these different items, and you'll actually learn a lot of different things that most of them we've probably read in the past, but maybe a lot of people, especially new members, have not. So it is informational, and you'll learn a lot by doing that. I want to thank you for the presentation, and we'll go ahead and move on then to the north. Members in the north, do we have any questions or comments for Laura Carr?
Ben Cantu for the North. I have a question. 20 years from now, by the way, I have old restored cars. 20 years from now, I have a bumper that needs to be re-chromed. What would be the substitute? Yeah.
Thank you for the
I mean,
question.
I understand what the report reports, but is there an alternative process to chroming that results in the same end, but not toxic?
Right, thank you for the question. So the ATCM is designed to phase out the use of hexavalent chromium, and I think the idea is that will also encourage the development and the implementation of replacements that could be used in place of hexchrome. But as always, I was not involved in the creation of that regulation, but I can certainly put you in touch with somebody who was, and they might be able to provide more detailed information for you.
Okay. In 20 years, you won't have gas. In 20 years, I won't be here, but somebody will want their bumper chromed. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any other member comments or questions from the North? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move down to the South. Any questions or comments for Laura from the South?
Israel Carr from the South. I have a question concerning life expectancy and stuff. Is there an algorithm that you use to figure out if we're going up or down in life expectancy? I know that I've heard on the news, well, from the government saying that since COVID, life expectancy went down a little bit because of COVID and all the issues of people making poor choices in their life, relying on substance abuse and stuff and things. So I know life expectancy went down on that. But how do you determine when we have higher homelessness, more and more every day, and more other issues coming with life expectancy, with poor choices in life? How do you figure that out, or you eliminate those areas and figure out as normal people how, if our life is getting better, or more richer, or less richer? How do you figure that out as far as in your what's going to happen in the future, other than somebody saying something? We're getting better, or we're getting worse. And how do you figure that out? Is my question.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So are you asking in the context of the research project, the first item that I presented on, or is it just sort of a general question about CARB's methodology?
So really, we don't know, other than what you hear from them, how they come out and figure it out.
Right. Well, I guess I would have to. I'm trying to figure out which staff here at CARB would be the best
what
person to put in
formula
touch
do
with
you
you.
use, or algorithm do you use, or whatever you use, determine if our life is getting better or worse, especially with all the issues that's happening in California. I know in other states, I'm sure they're getting better. I'm sure in other states are getting worse, but here in California, where I'm more concerned about is how do you determine if what we're doing before we start passing new regulations that may not make a difference at all, other than hurting the people who are living the good life, the healthy life. Because that's a choice that we make if we want to live healthy or unhealthy, want to be alcoholics or be smokers or stay out in the streets or do crime. Those are all the things that's getting worse, But how do you? I just like to know. I like for all of us to live longer, and in my personal opinion, maybe it's the wrong thing to say. I wish someone wouldn't live as long, out there, the criminals and stuff. But anyway, I just wonder what kind of how do you it's being determined? Because there's just questions that I have, but that's my personal deal. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I will circle back with you to make sure that you get an answer for that.
Well, yeah, Laura, just to piggyback on that real quick, I would imagine that they probably are doing like mortality tables of people that apply these chemicals, or maybe in an area within a half a mile of a location where they do that or something like that. But is there a place that he could look on or contact on at the district or at ARB to find out what the measurement criteria were and where they were measured? you could maybe provide that to the staff and they could get that to him.
Certainly. Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll follow up with the right
all right.
staff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other member comments or questions from the South? Hearing none, we'll come to the Central. Any comments or questions from members here in the Central District?
I have a question. On the first study that you mentioned, the study based on race and life expectancy, do you presuppose that different races are affected differently by whatever the factor may be, the air quality or whatever?
Right. Thank you for the question. So again, that's a project that I did not work on, but I can get in touch with the staff who were responsible for that board item, and I can circle back with you and make sure that you get a response.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members here in Central? Perhaps the district could go ahead and we could ARB could send that information to the district as to, since we've had now 2 members ask sort of some of these criteria, if we could get some of the hard, how it was all put together, provided to staff, and then they can get it out to the members. I appreciate that. Do we have any public comment or questions from the South?
No public comment in the South.
Public or comments or questions from the North?
No public comment in the North.
Public questions or comments, or internet questions or comments from the Central?
Are there any members of the public that would like to comment here in the Central office? There, seeing none and no indication of any online comments.
Okay, well, with that, then I will thank you for your time and for your report, Laura. Thank you very much. And are you going to be with us for number 9 on the update on the state advanced clean fleets regulation, or is that somebody else?
Nope, I'm going to be handing that over to 2 staff who worked on the advanced clean fleets regulation, and they should be being promoted to panelists right now.
Okay, Laura, thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item number 9, please. The update on the state advanced clean fleets regulation.
Hi, everyone. This is Craig During. Can you hear me?
You do.
Wonderful. So yeah, my name is Craig During. I manage the efforts for the advanced clean fleets regulation. I've also invited Paul Arnesia to join me to walk through the regulation itself, give you an overview, and hopefully answer any questions at the end. So I'm not in control of the slide. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So as you know, trucks are the biggest, highest emitters in California. Really, the big takeaway from this slide is that even though the tractors, well, we have about 1.8 million trucks operating in California. Even though the tractors only represent, you see the blue pie wedge, class 7 and 8 tractors, they only represent about 12% of the population. If you look on the pie chart on the right, they literally are almost producing half of the total emissions in the state of California. And they represent about 48% of the total NOx emissions statewide. Next slide. So we've created a suite of regulations, obviously, to reduce those emissions from medium and heavy duty trucks. We've got the Innovative Clean Transit regulation, airport shuttle bus regulation. And I won't go through all of these, but you see the one in the red box, that's Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. It's part of a suite of regulations that we're moving forward with to reduce emissions from these trucks. Next slide. So here you can see that there's about 150 truck models that are available today in all weight classes, and the market continues to grow. You know, these trucks are here, and because of the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, which I'll talk about next, they're going to continue to grow. So next slide. So the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation is a prequel, if you will, to the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, which was adopted in 2020. And the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation ensures the supply of available zero-emission vehicles, that those vehicles will continue to grow in the upcoming years. You can see the graph with the percentage percentage is increasing. It requires manufacturers to sell zero-emission vehicles in a growing percentage. 8 other states have already joined the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, with the most recent partners being Colorado and Maryland. So this is catching on. The board's, and in addition, the board's resolution set zero-emission targets for future fleet requirements with 100% zero-emission drayage, last mile delivery and public fleets by 2035, 100% zero-emission buses, utility fleets, and refuge trucks by 2040, and 100% zero-emission everywhere feasible by 2045. So next slide. So, and the next slide. So that leads us into the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. The Advanced Clean Fleets regulation really is 4 parts. On the manufacturers, we've included a 100% zero-emission vehicle sales requirement. And then there are 3 fleet requirements, one on drayage trucks, one on state and local government fleets, and then one on what we call high priority fleets. And I'll go through each one of those. The next slide. So when we look at the 100% sales requirement, ACF represents a first of its kind requirement for medium and heavy duty trucks, establishing an end to internal combustion engine sales by 2036. Per board direction, beginning in 2036, all medium and heavy duty vehicles sold into California must be zero emission. This piece of the rule is a key element in meeting the state's carbon neutrality target and the goals laid out by the governor's executive order. The 100% sales requirement also sends a clear signal to the trucking market, including manufacturers, fleets, infrastructure providers, service technicians, and local governments that zero emission is here. All right, next slide. So what I'll do now is I'll talk about the drayage requirements, which apply to tractors operating in the state's seaports and rail yards. This requirement will create a fully zero emission drayage fleet by 2035. To conduct drayage operations in California, trucks must be registered in the CARB online system. Legacy combustion powered trucks will be allowed to register through December 31st, 2023, the end of this year. Legacy trucks will be able to remain in drayage service until the end of their minimum useful life, as long as they visit a California seaport or international rail yard annually. Beginning January 1st, 2024, only zero emission trucks can be added to the registration system. So as the old trucks age out, the new trucks coming in must be zero emission, with the goal of getting 100% zero emission by 2035. All right, next slide. So for high priority and federal fleet requirements, this portion of the regulation applies to well-capitalized businesses well-suited for electrification. These requirements apply to any fleet with 50 or more vehicles under common ownership and control, or any fleet with greater than 50 million in revenue, as well as federal government agencies. There are additional requirements on brokers and motor carriers to ensure that they are hiring compliant fleets. In addition to Class 2B through 8 vehicles, this requirement applies also to off-road yard tractors and light-duty delivery vehicles, such as those operated by the Postal Service. Next slide. So what this rule requires, the default option for the high priority fleets is to follow what we call the model year schedule. Starting January 2024, fleet owners must report which trucks will be part of their California fleet. From that point forward, all new additions to the California fleet must be zero emissions or near zero emissions, what we call a plug-in hybrid. Trucks that have reached the end of their useful life must be removed from the California fleet. All right, next slide. And to illustrate how this will work, this slide shows the schedule to remove legacy trucks based on age of the vehicle. So a 2010 model year trucks can operate until 2028, and newer trucks will have additional time. High mileage vehicles like tractors are guaranteed a minimum of 13 years of operation, but would need to be removed from their fleet once they reach 800,000 miles or 18 years. Broadly, this structure ensures a phase-in over time to zero emissions based on age of the vehicle and a company's fleet today. All right, next slide. So this is the state and local government requirements. So the default option for state and local governments is a zero emission purchase requirement that aligns with public fleets already existing purchasing cycles. Starting in 2024, 50% of purchases must be zero emission. That means that the other half can be combustion powered until 2027. And again, near zero emissions or plug-in hybrids would count as a zero emission vehicle for this requirement. However, agencies that are in designated counties, you can see on the right, the red shaded areas, will be exempt from the zero emission purchase requirement till 2027. This exemption has also been granted to divisions that have 10 or fewer vehicles in the state of California. Starting in 2027, however, all purchases made would need to be zero emissions or near zero emissions. In this structure, if no vehicles are being purchased, then no action is required. This means that fleets can continue to operate their vehicles as long as they wish. Next slide. So there is an optional ZEV milestone phase-in option that is more flexible. This is available to both the high priority fleets and the state and local government fleets. Under this option, a certain portion of their fleet needs to be composed of zero or near zero emission vehicles. The requirements are more aggressive for well-suited vehicles and delayed for more specialized or longer distance vehicles, as you can see in the groupings, the group 1, group 2, and group 3. This phase-in happens gradually over the next 2 decades. As long as the zero emission vehicle milestones are met, fleet owners have considerable flexibility with the rest of their vehicles. Fleets can prioritize which vehicles to electrify and can purchase combustion-powered engines as long as they meet the overall phase-in targets. When purchasing a new combustion vehicle, and part of this is if they do buy a combustion vehicle to meet these requirements, any new combustion vehicle would have to meet all the California certified new what we call the omnibus certification standards. So it'd be the cleanest combustion engines possible. All right, next slide. So yeah, there we go. So the provision has many exemptions. So the ACF regulation does contain a number of provisions that the fleet owner may utilize in assistance with meeting compliance requirements. We understand that there's going to be some complications, right? These provisions address a variety of circumstances, including zero emission vehicle availability, vehicles operated for less than 1,000 miles per year, delays in infrastructure, vehicles involved in accidents, vehicles under mutual aid agreements, meeting daily usage needs, waste and wastewater fleet transitions, and more. And I'll add, there is a new 5-day pass that was added to temporarily allow vehicles to enter the state if they're coming in from outside of the state. All right, next slide. So in summary, the regulation is phased in over the course of the next 2 decades, and all combustion-powered vehicles are guaranteed their full useful life. This transition will not happen overnight. Both public fleets and high-priority fleets can use the ZEV milestone option and have the flexibility to purchase near zero emission, or what we call plug-in hybrids, with all-electric range. Lastly, the regulation includes numerous provisions to ensure a fleet owner would not be out of compliance for situations outside of their control. They include vehicle delivery delays, infrastructure delays, accidents, all of those provisions I just showed you on the previous slide. And likewise, the proposed regulation will allow for the purchase of combustion-powered vehicles if a zero-emission vehicle is not available or it does not meet the duty cycle needs of the fleet. All right, next slide. So this, go ahead, one more slide. There we go. Yeah, so this regulation was approved by the board in April. We're currently in the process of sending it over to the Office of Administrative Law for adoption. But we understand that infrastructure is crucial to the successful transition of California's fleet to zero emission technology. The governor recently announced a joint agency statement of intent between California's partner agencies. You can see them listed below. This statement of intent outlines the state's shared approach to ensure that there is enough electricity and hydrogen supply, and that there is enough fueling stations to serve the growing zero emission transportation market. Among our shared principles for coordination and cooperation are ensuring equity is a consideration in the decision-making process, and there's robust and frequent communication between agencies, including the sharing of data and analysis when feasible. In addition, CARB continues to discuss the issues surrounding infrastructure with stakeholders and electrical providers. So we'll be continuing to host infrastructure work groups in order to foster collaboration and coordination on this topic. And then the last slide, all right, I'm sorry, second to last slide. So as far as implementation, the ACF regulation, so we are developing a reporting system that will establish, that will be established in alignment with the reporting requirements, along with an external data dashboard for ease of information readiness. Staff, we're preparing for the incoming fleet reporting and expected exemption request, which includes the development of a zero emission vehicle availability list. Approximately 30 fact sheets will be available to cover all rule requirements, provision processes, and frequently asked questions. We also have a hotline that will be updated, and operators will be trained to provide compliance assistance for this regulation. Lastly, staff will hold we're in the process of developing a truck regulation advisory council work groups on specific topic areas that are to be determined, to continue coordination with stakeholders to ensure that the rule projections are coinciding with real-time implementation. And then the last slide is just a list of some information or places to go to get information. So we've got our Advanced Clean Fleets homepage. We've got a dedicated ZEV Fleet email account. We also have a truck stop website, which is a great portal for anybody who owns a truck in California. And then we have a hotline that's available as well. So that is the regulation in a nutshell. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, that was a lot of information about a probably fairly controversial program. I'm going to open this up first to members from the north. Do you have any questions or comments?
I do, Richard O'Brien. With the milestones that you have for ZEV and more efficient engines, the infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, is due to be able to go for zero electric vehicles by 2050. So there is a disparity of a minimum of 8 years, if not 15 years, where your electrical power will not be available to meet the goals that you have placed. Now, you say you're working with the electrical providers. What milestones do they have, and where can we research that?
Yeah, so I do know that the Energy Commission has done a study. They looked at the medium and heavy duty electrification challenges, and Paul, I'm not sure if we know the name of the study, but if you go to the California Energy Commission website, there's a study that they did. It looked at the rollout of infrastructure rollout in order to meet our ACF requirements. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but yeah, but there's been a lot of research in this area.
And this is Paul Ornage, staff on the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation. I can just add that we are we have been involved with the utilities and with the sister agencies heavily. The regulation has some provisions that can help address this. If there's an infrastructure delay of up to 5 years, but we do see that this is something that we're going to need to keep track of. So we will, as part of the implementation process, just seeing what the status of infrastructure is going to be critical. We're going to be keeping track of that and providing updates just based as information is coming in. The utilities do recognize that they have a role in this and that they will be making efforts to get the infrastructure in place. Not everything's happening overnight, so smaller deployments can be placed before larger deployments, but it will be, a lot needs to be done. We'll be working with everyone to make sure it can happen.
That answer your question, Mr. Bryan?
I'll look it up and see what I can find from Cal Energy, and I still think that there's going to be a significant lag, and your end game is going to be delayed to the right, anywhere from 12 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Any other members in the north that have any questions or comments?
This is Jose Delgadillo. Is this already into law?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in the rulemaking process, first our board needs to approve the regulation, which happened at the end of April. The next step is that the regulation needs to be approved by the Office of Administrative Law. We're expecting that to happen around the July or August timeframe. So after that occurs, it will become law. So right now we're finalizing the rulemaking, but our board has approved.
My other question, thank you. And my other question is, what if, even if it becomes law and you are not able to comply, what happens?
So we do expect fleets to comply. If fleets are not able to comply, that's what our enforcement division will be handling based on the circumstances of the case. Penalties may be applied, but we do encourage fleets to make an attempt to comply with the regulation if possible.
Yeah, and I'll add to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Just all that real quick. We do have quite a few provisions built into the regulation. So there are off ramps, if you will, in the event that you're trying to comply and you just there's something that you just can't do. You can't get the infrastructure or the truck's not available. We do have some off ramps to deal with that. So compliance should be pretty straightforward.
All right, thank you. Any more comments or questions from the north, from members? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move to the south. Any comments or questions from members in the south?
Yeah, just real quickly, I have two questions. In your regulatory summary, bullet number 2, existing vehicles can operate their full useful life. Who makes that determination?
The useful life was defined by the California legislature to be essentially when the vehicle reaches 800,000 miles or 18 years. So we use the same definition that the legislature set when they approved SB1 a few years ago.
800,000 miles?
800,000 miles or 18 years of age, whichever comes first.
Okay. Then the second question I had is under implementation. Last bullet, truck regulation advisory council work groups. I would assume that industry's involved in that as far as the advisory council work group.
That's correct.
Not all you guys labeled up here above. You need to get some people in there that are rubber on the road, that they know what they're talking about. And I think, CTA, California Truckers Association, or some group like that, or just some of the mom and pop guys out here that that's their daily living. So how do you do that? You're going to appoint some, or what? Who does that?
So we plan to get this started later in the summer. What we're planning to do is something similar to what we did this a long time ago for the truck and bus regulation. How that worked is that we had a number of subcommittees that we had people volunteer based on whether they'd be able to participate in the process, members of industry, fleet owners. just to make sure we had a good group of people from all different parts of industry. So we that we're expecting that to be the same process this time, but we'll definitely appreciate feedback on how we should set these up. But we do want to make sure that we have truckers from all types of industries on these advisory councils, just to make sure we can hear what's actually happening on the ground.
Well, I mean, it's an urgency to listen to what these guys have to say. Otherwise, you're gonna have truckers circling your capital up there.
Understood.
It's just the way it works. You know that. They've been up there before. So the communication with all the truckers is very, very important. So that's my 2 bits.
All right, thank you. Anybody else down in the south?
My name is John Sanders. I have a couple questions. I was looking at the exemption area, designated counties or the exemption area. It appears that those are the counties that might feed some of the particulate matter into our area, making us have more rules than others. Why are they exempt?
So in those areas, that's only for the public fleets who opt into that pathway. And it's meant to capture that for these public agencies, they may have some more rural operations, so longer distances, some potential budget challenges. So we gave them a 3-year delay, but they're not exempt from the rule, just so they can have more time to plan out their transition to zero emission vehicles and to make sure that they can prepare and take lessons learned from larger fleets.
Okay, my second question will be, may use exemptions and extensions. It's on the same page, page 13. Now, what's the process for that? How hard is that going to be to get exemptions? I mean, because a lot of times you turn paperwork in and nope, too bad, can't do it, and that's the end of the story. So is there some sort of less red tape or more industry-friendly process in this than, you know, what we've been butted up against recently?
The goal of what we're trying to achieve with this round is that all the criteria for whether or not someone will be granted an exemption are in the regulation. So if you submit this information, you will be granted it. We've also added criteria that we have to approve any completed exemption request within 45 days of receiving it. So once we get a package, we have to approve it. Otherwise, once it exceeds 45 days, the fleet will get the exemption, no questions asked, which makes sure that we have to be processing these quickly. But we do want this to be transparent, that if you submit the information, that you will be granted it. And we will be, I think this will be a topic that we want to make sure that we can be clear on. But we do want to, these exemptions are meant for situations where either you can't get the vehicles or there's issues outside your control. If the vehicles are available, we do expect fleets to be purchasing the zero emission vehicles.
Okay, this will be my third question. Is there some sort of agreement being voted on today or regarding all of this that you're announcing? Is there some sort of vote or agreement being brought before a board or something like that this afternoon that it hasn't really been published except for the trucking companies who have reached out to me?
We don't have a vote today. Our board voted on this proposal at the end of April. We're here to provide an update on what the proposal is.
Okay. For my last question, it's not a question, it's a statement, and I'll be brief. It's not very big. I reviewed the Advanced Clean Trucks fact sheet that came from one of the people I was trying to buy a truck from yesterday. After I was reading about the acceleration of the zero emission truck markets, I can only conclude that the California Air Resource Board is on a suicide mission to destroy the tax base of the San Joaquin Valley, and it is beyond me why we are allowing this to happen. The state of California is accelerating an unproven business model that it cannot sustain. More ZEVs in the heavy duty workplace is not a successful business plan. The vehicles used for heavy duty work require more than 250 miles per charge. The vehicles used for heavy duty work require torque and an 8 to 12 hour workday. None of the current truck manufacturers have an engine that will meet the requirements as requested in the time frame needed. I spoke with a Cummins representative who told a group of us on a call that they are changing their business model and the tractor and straight truck manufacturers will have to look elsewhere for the equipment they used to provide. My question / statement, are we donating to a concept that may never have the infrastructure to succeed? And I don't know why California Air Resource Board is working so hard to be the pet of the EPA. Maybe it's the governor. Who is going to subsidize the companies that CARB has determined not California friendly? I don't know that answer. Omnibus regulation to me is the door of the coffin we are going to nail down in the next section. Again, we are presented with an infrastructure that is not prepared for what is happening. Recently, the Affinity Truck Center had an opportunity to demo a straight truck for milk transportation. In order to do this, an electric model was placed on a tow truck along with the generator that would charge the unit just in case the ambient temperature drained some of the charge en route. I don't know how the demo went, but I'm not betting on it being a success. I asked the gentleman who delivered our new state-of-the-art Mac today if we could demo a unit. He said, as soon as we get one that might have enough power to make it through a demo. And the second thing he asked was how many hours a day the equipment would work. That was the end of the questions. ACF proposed changes. If I had become compliant today, the company I work for, I would spend $4,500,000 just to get untested, possibly not functional units. That's 9 units total. But I took some time yesterday and contacted PG&E to discuss our additional future solar needs. PG&E said we would add 25% more solar panels, $190,000 to possibly maintain ZEVs. The units, due to the 9,000 pound weight difference, would limit my hauling capacity. Furthermore, PG&E countered with your solar plans are already in plan check, and if they are withdrawn, our NIM cost would increase. The last thing PG&E said was without the solar, we might get 3 charging stations, but don't count on it. It was lightning to have the discussions I had last Friday and today. What I learned was I need to sharpen my pencil and pen and start applying for exemptions. For me, the infrastructure delay is the way to go. The other exemptions will follow in order best suited for our type of business. Again, in closing, I cannot figure out why California has to be the place to destroy industry and the tax base it has enjoyed for so long. Please consider staying on the EPA's timeline and not make California, specifically the San Joaquin Valley, the place where industry and huge tax bases go to die. That's all.
All right, thank you very much for your statement and your opinion. Anything else from the South?
I have a couple of questions, and the gentleman hit right on the nail. And I was involved. We had like 60 trucks. We haul produce all the way from Mexico border all the way to Arbor Lamont area. That's outside of Bakersfield. And talking with the owners, most of them are individual. We have sub haulers that do all the hauling and stuff. And basically, they're gonna have to either move out of California or shut down their operation and find a job because they just can't afford purchasing these vehicles. A lot of the questions is how does the battery hold up from one extreme to another? The example would be there's a new pickup that came out. And if some gentleman was driving, it's only get 120, was advertised to get over 400 miles to charge. He's only getting 125 to 130 miles out of that full charge. But there's no guarantee to these drivers how far they can go and limit their the income they would receive to haul in their cargo. How they're going to fill up all this infrastructure, all these trucks in a truck stop trying to get to recharge again, get to their destination. There'll be enough of them. The second is, will the state help the FOB where the trucks are stationed at to have enough charging stations there at their headquarters for all these trucks, say 60 trucks, and will it take another 60 of them for one's going, if they come back, they have to have another vehicle to come back on for charging, especially in hauling produce where you got a time element there to in order to get the product there without wilt or limpness or quality issues. Another thing too is about these long haulers that leave California, goes cross country, and most of these trucks, they 100,000 miles a year is nothing. Other trucks get well over 100,000 a year, and they get well over $1 million plus in their lifetime before they trade them in. They're just now about 80,000. They just got broke in and ready to go. But there's trucks that come into state. Are they exempt or have to pay an extra penalty or come into the state with a truck that doesn't meet our standards? Or can the trucking industry here do like hunt transportation? Is they base it out of Texas and stuff, so they're exempt from a lot of California taxes and stuff, road taxes and things, and it's going to get permits when they come to California. These are questions I have that we're going to be fair and also have common sense in there, because I know a lot of this stuff's not going to happen. I'll be long dead for a lot of this will happen. I just see it prolonged. It's going to be prolonged on there, but technology is changing, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that we do have the technology that the trucks can go 600 miles or better, guaranteed, go those distance, and I think that'd be great. But at this time here, it's not going to happen. I think it's a pie in the sky and unrealistic. There's be a lot of when you do implement it, you're going to see a lot of failures and a lot of people just suffering. And who's going to end up affecting? It'll be the people that we're trying to protect, the poor people, and the high cost of energy to maintain the trucks, electricity, the cost of food, transportation. It's all the cost in there, and everybody's got to pay for the cost of food. I can give you an instance, my personal instance, what's going to happen. We used to have a good market share in the LA market, a lot of produce there. And a couple of years ago, we lost our market share. Couldn't figure out why until we found out. Here we are next door to LA, but Israel can grow, pack, ship, and sell to the LA market cheaper than we can do it here in Bakersfield. So we got impacted. And those are one of the things that's hurting California is we're pricing ourselves out of the market. There are things we got to look at in the long term. Who's it affecting? It's affecting the citizens, the businesses, and also the people here working in the fields and stuff, the farm workers and other oil industry, the working people who work, get high paying jobs in the oil industry. It affects a lot of industries here. That's a concern that I have, is that we take a good logical approach to it. As technology changes, we can change with it, but we just got to be realistic about the whole thing. That's all I have to say. And I just thank you for listening to me. The mic's still on, so I didn't get shut off, but thank you.
We let you go. It's okay. Thank you for your comments. Let's go ahead and move it to the central. Anybody here in the central DS like to make a comment? Dennis? So go ahead.
I just had a real quick question. On the 50 vehicles for the high priority, is that all registered vehicles, whether it's Class 8? I know you have 2B here, but anything in that registered, whether it's on the road or off the road?
Sorry, I was muted. The 50 or more includes any on-road vehicles or off-road yard tractors. So it's generally all the on-road vehicles Class 2B and above.
And then just one more quick thing. I know we've mentioned it a few times now, but as far as the mileage that some of these zero emission trucks are, they're useful day mileage, is there a number that CARB is working off of that says, the average between a Freightliner or Peterbilt or whatever it is, we're seeing that they can average X amount of miles per charge?
So I guess I'll start with what the data so when we passed the advanced clean trucks regulation a few years ago, one of the requirements was the large entity reporting, which is collecting data from fleets on how they actually use their vehicles. Through that reporting requirement, we got information for about 400,000 vehicles and their typical usage pattern. Based on that data, about 90% of the non-tractors travel below 150 miles per day, and about 60% of the day cab tractors travel below 200 miles per day. Both of those are ranges we can see right now with zero emission vehicles. We know that for longer haul applications, the vehicles aren't there yet. So, but yeah, what we're seeing right now is that 150, 200 miles is about the range. For longer range vehicles, we do expect them to come to market over time, but the rule has some provisions in place to address that. The daily usage exemption covers cases where the zero emission vehicles are available but can't meet the fleet's hours or mileage needs. So in those cases, if the vehicles on the market don't meet what the fleet needs, they can apply for an exemption and purchase a combustion powered vehicle. So that's one of the things. And just again, this will be a phase in over the next decade. So in the earlier years, we expect that the zero emission vehicles can be phased into the more well-suited applications, and over time, as the technology improves and develops, that the longer range applications can transition to zero emission technologies too. So that's kind of how we're looking at the range situation right now in the upcoming years.
And again, I think to reiterate, I think what a lot of the concern is that from what you just said, we're planning this and putting something in the law and assuming that technology is going to be there in the next 10 to 20 years, which I think everybody agrees, hopefully it is. But that technology just isn't there yet for, from what you're saying, maybe a lower group or a smaller group of long haul truckers in the state of California. If the numbers that you have show that maybe less than 150 miles per day, from the experience that I have with the companies that I deal with, it's closer to 300 to 400 miles a day round trip. But again, I think we're putting this law into place, assuming the technology is going to be there when, like you mentioned, it just isn't there yet.
I think just one thing to be clear is that for the regulation, there's a delayed timeline for the longer range vehicles. Sleeper cab tractors don't have ZEV requirements until 2030 unless you're on the ZEV milestone pathway, which does give a good amount of time. But we hear the concern, and this is something we're going to be monitoring.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just interested in what CARB's position is as it relates to the constitutional issue we're dealing with, the Interstate Commerce Clause, and the fact that most tractor traffic is interstate, coming from outside the state of California into the state itself, and we have regulations that affect interstate commerce. And I can only imagine the litigation that's going to come from this if it hasn't started already. We have a set of rules for tractors in the state of California, but what about all those that are coming from other states into the state of California? How does that affect interstate commerce? And shouldn't that be? Isn't there a discussion about the fact that should be federal regulations as opposed to regulations specifically by the state of California, which goes in line with some of the other comments that have been made? I don't see how you differentiate what we're dealing with here. I mean, this is CARB even considering how this is going to be tied up in litigation for probably several years just to deal with that fact alone?
Thanks for the comment. For a more detailed question, I'll probably have to get the lawyers in touch, but broadly, the regulation applies to vehicles that enter California. Based on previous litigation with the truck and bus regulation, which affected any vehicle which entered California. That regulation was upheld, even though it affects vehicles that are out of state, and we expect a similar precedent here. I can't give too much more detail. That's something the lawyers would have to give more detail on, but we do believe that this regulation is valid on that basis.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm new here, but there's been a lot of developments made in fossil fuel burning vehicles where they're really clean burning now. So I guess I don't understand why it's so important to go 100% EV, especially on the big trucks like we're talking about.
Thanks for the comment. And I think when we look at any regulation, we have to figure out how it fits into the overall state plan for how we're going to hit our air quality and climate goals. So California has two of the most polluted air basins in the state, in the San Joaquin Valley and South Coast. And even with all the regulations and all the upcoming regulations, like the cleaner burning engines due to the omnibus regulation, we still need more to actually achieve federal attainment requirements. So advanced clean fleets is a part of this to make sure that we can actually reach the attainment goals that we need to hit. So even if we cleaned up combustion as much as we can, it wouldn't be enough. So moving beyond combustion is critical to meet the state's goals.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk of infrastructure being electric and hydrogen and the lack thereof. I can speak from a small municipality standpoint, and we're suffering trying to pay our bills just as a city due to all of the regulations that are coming down from Sacramento that we have to try to figure out how to foot the bill. We're trying to bring economic development into our town so that we can help pay those bills. But when developers are being told that there's a 24-month lead time to be able to even get electricity to their whatever they're going to be developing, they go elsewhere. So we're struggling with that. But for some reason, magically, there's electricity for all of the housing that's being pushed to be built in all of these communities. So I'm just curious as to what the outcome is going to be for us when this focus is going to be on bringing this infrastructure in for electric and hydrogen. Is that going to push our lead times out even more? Because it seems like what comes down from Sacramento's priority, and we get kind of put on the back burner. And then I don't know what the end game is, but it's a continued struggle for some of the smaller communities to try to keep up. And the focus just seems to be coming from Sacramento and not, or what the agendas are from Sacramento, and not actually the quality of life that our residents here in California are living.
Okay. You have a response?
So my question is, what could this potentially do to what we're trying to do in small communities to try to bring economic development? Is this going to further exacerbate the issues that we're having now?
Greg, feel free to hop in on this one, but I think broadly, we do recognize that infrastructure is one thing that we are going to be working on, and based on what the work we're doing with our sister agencies, with the lead time requirements, we are going to be working to make sure that it can happen. If issues are popping up, we will have the provisions in place to help that. But this rule is just one smaller part of the overall energy planning between our agency and other agencies, and we are coordinating on this closer. But we do hear the concerns, and we are going to be working just to make sure that if these issues are popping up, that we can address them.
Yeah, and that's right. Paul's right. We realize there's some challenges here. There is no silver lining. We get it. We're doing this for very important reasons. And even the governor realized that this is going to be a multi-agency effort in the state of California. We've got the Energy Commission involved, the Public Utilities Commission, California transportation agencies. Caltrans is even involved in this. So we're looking at this from a top-down approach, and we're getting support from the top. So there challenges? You bet there are, and we're doing everything we can at this point to make sure that those challenges are being addressed.
One more thing. I know that this is probably too late to say this, but maybe a more effective way, instead of just pushing these laws onto businesses and then end game to the rest of us, would be to focus on bringing down the cost of alternative vehicles before pushing them on to everyone. I think if you were able to do that and bring those costs down and bring the infrastructure in beforehand, then you would have more voluntary compliance, because it would be, people would see that, first of all, the infrastructure is there, the costs have been brought down, it's affordable for everyone, versus trying to hit the ground running with what seems like no real plan.
Yeah, and this is Craig. Let me just add one more thing. We did look at this from a cost-effective standpoint. That's why we have the advanced clean trucks regulation. We basically put the manufacturers on notice that they need to start building the trucks, building dependable, reliable trucks that have the range, that can be serviced at your local, dealership. Those trucks are they're starting to come, and they will be here in full force very soon. And along with that will be an infrastructure, development. By the way, we're setting these benchmarks so that industry can be also part of the solution, right? This is not a government only problem. So we fully expect, the industries, the energy providers, they're gonna be a part of the solution as well. They'll be working with the truck manufacturers. They'll be working with the fleets. You'll see truck stops, being electrified. You'll see roadside rest being electrified. You'll see local gas stations being electrified, and hydrogen will be available. This is not a government problem to solve. We're setting the benchmark so that there is concise and effective action that's already taking place.
Okay, I'm gonna take care of your questions. Sure. Anybody else? Okay, Chris.
Thank you for the presentation. Following along the cost analysis comparison, is there any cost analysis done on like fuel charging prices as part of this rule?
When we were developing the rulemaking, we did look into the costs. So we looked at the rate schedules that utilities have for heavy duty charging, and most utilities have special rates for heavy duty vehicles that offers lower costs during overnight periods or during the middle of the day. So based on that, the cost for electricity, I think, was 16 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour. For retail charging, that'll depend on what the station owners can operate. In light duty, we're seeing 30 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour. But we did look at those costs. Generally, the costs are lower for electricity versus diesel, but it'll depend on specifically when you're charging your vehicles for a lot of these applications.
Yeah, that's something we're definitely going to be tracking a lot closely. I mean, both PG&E and SoCal Edison have submitted like 45% rate increases for the upcoming year on top of the 2 increases that we'll experience this year already as part of their last general rate case. And I'm assuming with all of this manufactured demand for electricity that it's only going to drive costs to ratepayers and businesses higher. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll throw mine out and we'll be done with this one. I guess I would feel like rather than using a top-down approach, which presupposes that the people at the top really know what they're doing, and it's not from other reasons. I still think that a bottom-up approach is better. The needs of the citizenry comes first, not the wishes of the people at the top. And I think that we probably need more public involvement. I'm also concerned about, has anybody actually done any studies on air quality, global warming, and so forth, the cost of the lithium mining from not just a monetary cost and environmental cost, but also a human cost of how that's being mined and where it's being mined versus the cost of using CNG. Seems like CNG has been very, very effective. And it's also good to have something like that on a regular basis as a backup when the grid does go down, and from time to time the grids are going to go down. I also feel strongly that the state of California, if they're going to have these regulations, needs to be able to 100% guarantee that that power will be affordable and plentiful, that the citizenry will not have to pay for shortages of power or increased prices to make these rules effective, and that the supply chains are not ever going to be affected. The state needs to be able to guarantee that and not put programs in place that will cause those to happen. I've always said that if people who make the rules had personal liability for the consequences, they'd be a lot more careful about what rules they make. That's my comment and pontificating for today. And I want to thank the members of CARB for their presentation today. You actually got quite a spirited conversation going today, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of people here that'll be following up on their own, looking more into this and reaching out. We might need to actually go a little bit to the top and get our communities to reach out to their Congress members. And maybe we have to look at making some changes with the EPA that will then take the pressure off of California. So I want to thank you for your presentations today, and thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And with that, we will move on to our next item.
Through the chair, there's another member comment here in the north.
Okay, go ahead. And I do have to get public comment. Go ahead.
My question is, are there any plans to install charging stations at the rest areas along the freeway?
I think that's something that Caltrans is evaluating, and they've installed some, I think, further south. And at the same time, I know that a lot of public, private companies are looking at public charging stations for at truck stops and along the major corridor. So those are both, I think, in development at the moment. Anything else to add there, Craig?
Yeah, no, we also know that there's a lot of federal assistance coming our way as well. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, we're going to see a lot of money coming to California, even at the federal level, for infrastructure development. And the focus absolutely is along those major corridors. And Paul is right. Caltrans is looking at electrifying truck stops, and we're doing anything we can to help out.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. We need to go to public. Do we have any public comments from any public members in the South?
No public comment in the south.
Any comments from members of the public in the North?
No public comment in the north.
Any comments or internet comments from the Central District?
We do have one commenter online, Kim Mesfin.
Go ahead.
Good morning. This is Kim Mesfin. I'm the president of Affinity Truck Center. I sort of sit in the middle as an educator to my customers, the truck end users. And my questions to you were, is there an awareness or an expert at CARB that can help me and my customers understand how ACT, CARB Omnibus, and the ACF rules overlay one another? So last year I sold 450 diesel engines at 70 million in revenue with 5.6 in tax dollars. As currently written, as of January 1st, I do not have a diesel engine of any kind to sell into my customers. I am all in on EV. I've been installing all of the infrastructure since 2020. My facilities have capacity, and I am still receiving another delay on infrastructure installation until September of 2023. So I just need your help and your expertise in understanding, as I go out to my customers, what I am telling them today for their 2024 orders based on the waiver not yet approved for Omnibus, how they plan their business cycle. Do you have an expert that can overlay all three regulations?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be speaking now, but if you want to reach out to our Zev Fleet email account, we'll get you in touch with the right programs to help you answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. And I do understand that there's a lot of negotiations going on that omnibus portion. Do you have insight into when that would be finalized and put back out for public review?
Yeah, I do not. I know you're right. There are negotiations underway. I'm not sure what the results of those negotiations are and where they're at this point.
Very good. And my last comment is, while my manufacturers do have EVs available, I may sell 10 to 15 different models, and the EV that is available is covering only one of those models with the lower range that we spoke of. So again, we are all in. We need cleaner air. We want to follow this, but we can't shut down business and transportation running too fast towards it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments and your questions, and I thank ARB for their responses. We've already covered everything on public, so we're going to say thank you and goodbye for now and move on to the next item, and we'll see any of you that are with us next month, or in a month after next month.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Let's go ahead and move to the next item, which is going to be Emily again on the PM 2.5 contingency measure state implementation plan revision, item number 10.
Good morning. As promised, I am back to give you guys another update. I know you guys have heard a lot of information about contingency. It's your first meeting, so there's a lot of good information, but here today to provide you guys with an update. So as you know, the Valley faces unique challenges with respect to air quality, as well as attaining the air quality standards due to our unique combination of topography and meteorology. We are surrounded by mountains, and we have an inversion layer that often places a lid over the valley and traps the emissions here. So our challenges are definitely unmatched in comparison to any other region here in the nation. We are designated as extreme non-attainment of the 8-hour ozone standards and serious non-attainment of the PM 2.5 standards. Because of this and the severity of our challenges, substantial additional emission reductions are needed to achieve the ever stringent federal standards. And we will be needing to go beyond the already strict control limits that we have in place. And particularly, there's a need for additional reductions from mobile sources under state and federal jurisdiction. So PM 2.5 is one of the main pollutants that we deal with as far as our challenges go. And those are particles with a diameter of 2.5 microns and smaller. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the human hair is depicted on the slide. So that's 50 to 70 microns in diameter. In comparison, you can fit about 5 PM10 molecules throughout the diameter of the human hair. And there's about 4 PM 2.5 particles in 1 PM10 particle. So they're extremely small. They're a mixture of solid particles and liquid droplets in the air. And they're emitted directly or formed indirectly through chemical reactions between gases. This pollutant can cause a number of different health effects. To name a few, it can cause premature death, asthma, other respiratory symptoms, lung cancer, as well as a number of other health effects. So our governing board has adopted numerous attainment plans and control strategies in order to address these stringent air quality standards. Through our efforts, we've reduced stationary source ozone and PM forming NOx emissions by over 90%, as well as the California Air Resources Board has adopted numerous mobile source emissions controls. The district and CARB's combined efforts, in addition to our strong incentive programs, represent the nation's toughest emissions control program. And through our significant clean air investments, we continue to make major improvements with respect to air quality, as you can see in the graph that is depicted on the slide. This slide further shows the progress that we've made. On the left-hand side, you can see the 24 average design value progress all the way from 2003 to 2020. So you can see a number of areas here in the Valley are getting into attainment of the 2006 and 1997 standards. Similarly, on the right-hand side, that depicts the annual average design value progress since 2003. So we're here today to give an update on the contingency measure requirements and how we've been addressing those. Specifically, contingency measures are Clean Air Act requirement that we have a measure in place should we fail to make attainment, make progress towards the standard, or meet other requirements. The measure would automatically be implemented to achieve additional emission reductions. And this requirement has become increasingly challenging since a number of court cases have changed the interpretation of the requirements over time. Specifically, the Valley has non-attainment challenges under multiple standards. So not only do we need to identify a measure for one standard, we have to identify it for 6. We also are implementing, as I mentioned, the most stringent measures feasible here in the nation. So it's difficult for us to identify a measure that we're not already implementing. Contingency measures also have to achieve high emission reductions under the current interpretation. And they also have to be implemented automatically through what's called a contingency trigger, which is really difficult to identify an opportunity that is feasible, as a lot of control technologies take time to budget for, plan, and install. So due to that, there's a lack of feasible measures that fit the constraints of contingency, and it's just continued to evolve over time. Due to these challenges, in March of this year, EPA came out with draft contingency guidance by the urging of the district, CARB, and other agencies. And it included a number of considerations that, if finalized, would assist the Valley and other non-attainment areas in addressing these requirements. So just to quickly touch on them, they included some considerations for the amount of emission reductions needed. So, but based on their new draft approach, the reduction requirement would be less. They've also included considerations for, in cases such as the Valleys where there's no feasible opportunity, you could include an infeasibility justification. They've also included considerations for the time period in which reductions need to be achieved. So under the current requirements, they have to be achieved within a year of being triggered. And now they're allowing up to potentially 2 years if finalized, if we were to provide additional justification. And notably, the guidance does not include any considerations or assignments to the federal government, EPA, to address their fair share of reductions, as the majority of emissions here in the Valley do come from mobile sources under their jurisdiction. So I know we've talked a number of times at a number of meetings about the strategy that we've been putting together. So it was adopted by the governing board at the May public hearing. It included robust analysis showing the stringency of both the district and CARB's rules, as well as the lack of feasible contingency measure opportunities. We also adopted amendments to District Rule 4901, which is our rule for wood-burning fireplaces and wood-burning heaters, to incorporate a contingency provision. It also included a commitment from the district to evaluate potential amendments to our open areas regulation to address contingency requirements if it's determined that it's necessary to ensure EPA approvability of our contingency submission. And CARB did not identify any feasible measures at this time, but their evaluation is ongoing. We coordinated extensively with CARB and EPA through this process in developing our strategy. And the package does fulfill contingency requirements pursuant to the Clean Air Act, as well as EPA's draft guidance. So a little bit more detail on our wood-burning fireplaces measure. Historically, the rule has been approved by EPA as meeting most stringent measure requirements. And as I mentioned, we did amend the rule last month to incorporate a contingency measure, which would establish progressively more stringent curtailment levels within the rule upon issuance of final EPA approval that the measure meets requirements, and final determination by EPA that the Valley triggered one of the contingency elements. So the first is meet any reasonable further progress requirement, which means making progress towards attainment of the standard, meet any quantitative milestone in an attainment plan, submit a quantitative milestone report, or attain the PM 2.5 standard or standards by their applicable attainment dates. And notably, South Coast, they have a similar provision and structure in their wood-burning fireplaces rule, which was approved by EPA in April of 2022 as meeting PM 2.5 contingency requirements. So this graphic shows our current requirements within the rule, as well as the contingency measures, so we've incorporated 2. For reference, currently the hotspot counties of Fresno, Madera, and Kern are subject to a level 1 curtailment threshold of 12 micrograms per meter cubed, which is no burning unless registered, and a level 2 wood burning curtailment of 35 micrograms per meter cubed, which is no burning for all. And the non-hotspot counties of San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, Kings, and Tulare are subject to a level 1 and level 2 wood burning curtailment of 20 and 65. So the first contingency measure, if it were to be triggered, the non-hotspot counties would then be subject to the hotspot county curtailment levels of 12 and 35 for the level 1 and level 2. And then for the second contingency measure, if triggered, the level 1 curtailment level would be lowered by 1 microgram per meter cubed down to 11. I also want to touch briefly on the commitment that we included for open areas. So just way of background, an open area is a vacant portion of a residential or commercial lot and contiguous parcel that is immediately adjacent to and owned or operated by the same individual or entity. And this is not applicable to ag sources. They are subject to our conservation management practices rule. So in the current rule, urban open areas that are greater than half an acre and rural open areas greater than 3 acres, if disturbing 1,000 square feet or greater, must ensure soil stability and limit their visible dust emissions by no greater than 20% opacity. And through our collaboration with EPA and CARB, EPA did suggest this potential measure to us to increase the stringency for rural open areas, despite the minimal emission reductions that could be achieved. And they did approve a less stringent contingency measure as another example in Imperial County that is similar in August of 2019. So with that, we did include a commitment, as I previously mentioned, in the SIP revision that includes a commitment to consider amendments to the rural acreage threshold to potentially lower it as needed to ensure EPA approvability that our package meets contingency requirements. And any potential amendments would be evaluated through our continued public process. We have already held 2 public workshops, and we would also be looking at fire safety considerations and cost implications. As I mentioned, federal mobile sources here in the Valley make up the majority of emissions. And given the fact that the district and CARB are already implementing the most stringent measures feasible, it's increasingly critical that EPA do their fair share in reducing emissions under their control, such as interstate trucks, locomotives, and aircraft. There's also unprecedented funding opportunities under the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law that could be utilized to reduce emissions here in the Valley. And I will note that EPA is currently proposing regulations for locomotives and heavy-duty trucks. However, even if they're finalized, they would be helpful in reducing emissions in the long term and not in assisting in addressing contingency requirements in the short term. So in summary, our regulation that we amended for 4901, as well as our contingency package, addresses EPA's draft contingency guidance and conforms with the requirements. The reductions are achieved through the district's measures, and they fully satisfy the fair share reductions from sources under our jurisdiction. And there's a lack of additional feasible local and state measures that meet contingency requirements. So the first table demonstrates the needed reductions based on EPA's new approach in their draft guidance compared to the reductions being achieved by our adopted measures. So you can see on the far right-hand side, it shows the remaining balance for NOx. So this could be addressed through EPA, including a contingency for sources under their jurisdiction. And the second table, we believe, is more equitable and shows our fair share reductions. So this is just looking at the emissions from sources under our jurisdiction. So on the far right-hand side, again, you can see that the reductions are largely satisfied. And in summary, with the analyses that we've included in our package, we fully satisfy the contingency requirements. And lastly, just to touch on the public process, as I mentioned, we held a number of public workshops and had a robust public process with multiple opportunities for the public and stakeholders to offer their comments and suggestions. We held 2 workshops and solicited specific feedback on the measures that we evaluated. Workshop materials were made available in both English and Spanish, and we provided Spanish interpretation as well during the workshops. And notably, no significant public comments were received. And we did also provide updates to the governing board, to your Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as the Environmental Justice Advisory Group. And with that, I will open up for any comments or questions.
Thank you for that presentation. That was great. Do we have any member comments from the north?
Richard O'Brien again. With the EPA oversight and guidance that we're attaining, why is it so difficult for MPOs to have attainment from the EPA in their SCS? They refuse it almost every year or every 4 years.
As far as I understand them, I think we're okay with our conformity budgets at this time. I know there's quite a bit of questions and concerns that come up and some challenges in terms of those, but I think we're always able to figure out a solution at the end. And right now, I think all of our conformity budgets are on track.
Have they been approved? I don't believe they've been approved yet.
I think we're working for the approved plans that we have. They're definitely approved. We are working on another plan as we speak, and I'll have to check where we are on that. But I think we're definitely working through some of the issues, and ultimately, I think we'll be able to get there.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Anybody else from the north? Hearing none, we'll move to the south. Any member comments or questions from the south?
John Sanders. Did I hear correctly that the EPA support needed to meet clean air requirements is going to identify heavy duty vehicles again, besides what we're already talking about?
No, as part of the contingency measure, they're evaluating just in general those requirements, but that is not part of the contingency package.
Thank you, John. Anybody else down in the south? Bringing it to the central. Any questions or comments in the central? Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move to public comments. Do we have any public comments or questions from the north?
No public comment in the north.
In the south?
No public comment in the south.
Any public comment or internet comments in the central?
Are there any members of the public in Central who would like to comment? Seeing none and no indication of online comments.
Emily, thank you for another great presentation. Appreciate it. Hearing none, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, number 11, AB 617, and we'll have Jessica.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Chair for today, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the district, and my team oversees a lot of our community engagement efforts, but primarily one of our biggest projects is AB 617 or Assembly Bill 617, the Community Air Protection Program. I do know that we have some folks that are a little bit newer, so I'm definitely going to go over a little bit of what AB 617 is, and then I'll just give an update on each one of the communities that we work in. So CARB, or the California Air Resources Board, each year goes through a selection process to select disadvantaged or priority communities to receive very specific focused resources to identify and help mitigate, reduce emissions and reduce exposure to air pollution in communities that are usually overburden or environmental justice type communities. And so since 2018, CARB has selected 19 communities for these focused resources. 4 of them are here in the Valley. So we have, in the first year that we had selection, we had South Central Fresno and Shafter. The year after that, we had Stockton added to the list. And most recently, in 2021, we added Arvin Lamont as our 4th community. And so we work every month, sometimes weekly, depending on what we're doing, with community residents, businesses, local agencies, community-based organizations on what we call a community steering committee, or CSC. You'll hear that often from me. And we meet together for the first year of that established community to develop and then adopt what we call a community emissions reduction program, or CERP, you'll hear that all the time, or community air monitoring plan, or CAMP. And so both of those things are things that the district implements and we get special funding from the state to implement in each of these communities. And so we continue to host what we call monthly CSC meetings in each one of them. They've primarily been on Zoom, but certainly in the past few months, we've been trying to meet occasionally in person. We do recognize the benefits to meeting on Zoom. It is pretty accessible for a lot of folks. But we also, I think, as you all know from being back in person the past few meetings, also recognize the benefits of being in person. So just as an update, last year we met twice in Arvin-Lamont in person. And last I spoke with you, we were about to start our in-person meetings in all of the other groups. So we've now met in Shafter and in Stockton in person, and just in a few weeks here, down in the Malaga area, we will meet with our Fresno steering committee. So each of these are really just great opportunities to connect with folks, to provide updates, but then also get feedback just in a different way. It is more accessible when folks are able to make it to the meetings, especially for folks that are maybe not maybe they are monolingual Spanish speakers, so it just is a little bit more intimate and an opportunity to connect with them a little bit more, rather than having to hear everything interpreted over Zoom calls. So we've definitely, through those processes, made a lot of progress on incentives measures. That's a lot of what these SERPs are about, are taking funding from the state and then providing incentives to the community, whether it's to businesses or residents or a variety of different agencies. And some of those incentive measures that we've recently made progress on include our Clean Air Rooms program. So just an update there I wanted to provide you is, as a reminder, each of the SERPs in Fresno, Shafter, and in Stockton have $1 million for a clean air room program. And that's where we deploy a free air purifier to residents that live within the boundaries of those 617 communities at no cost to them. We just launched that program yesterday. At the same time, given support from you all, from our governing board, even from community members in those AB 617 communities, we also launched a valley-wide program, so not just focusing on those communities. That is also $1 million, and that was also launched yesterday. So we're really excited about the progress that we've already seen in each one of those. It's the same if you were around last year, same as our pilot program, with some sort of additional benefits from hearing from all of you. We've made sure that it's not just disadvantaged communities, but also low-income communities that qualify. So taking into account some of the communities folks felt like were left out last time. And again, that's $1 million valley-wide outside of those three communities. So in total, it's about 20,000 units we're looking to deploy through that program, probably in the next few months. We expect that we're going to get a big push. The idea being, of course, hopefully before, knock on wood, not a terrible, but likely sometime fire season. Really the point here is to protect folks from wildfire smoke and make sure that they have a safe space to be in when we, unfortunately, we'll probably get some wildfire smoke at some point, here in the valley. So that's one of our biggest incentives programs that we've launched in all of the communities in a little bit here. So that's just a couple of exciting notes here. And then I wanted to let you all know, especially for folks that maybe are newer, haven't had a chance, we have a website that is dedicated to this whole program, and you can dive into each one of the communities. You can see recordings from meetings. We have subcommittee meetings, all of the agendas. Everything is bilingual. Maybe any materials that you think folks, maybe that you represent or that you work with, maybe some of the business folks in each of these communities want some more information about what's going on. It is community.valleyair.org. And we've sent that out a couple times, and I can also follow up with Katrina to just get more resources sent out to folks. That is the best place to be the most up to date on really weekly, sometimes daily updates that we provide there. And so that's all I have for my update. And if it still makes sense to you all, I'll pass to CARB and they'll provide an update, and then I'll take questions afterwards. So I know that Brian Moore is on the call right now, if that works for you.
That is just fine. Let's go ahead and bring Brian. Come on in and let's hear your brief state implementation information.
Sure. Hello, everyone. As Jessica said, my name is Brian Moore, and I am a manager in the Office of Community Air Protection that works kind of on statewide implementation of AB 617 with Air District staff like Jessica throughout the state. So right now, our big push is a revision of our statewide strategy to implement the program, which we call the blueprint. And this revision, we kind of split the document into two parts. The first part is an overall vision, like for the next 5 years, really focusing on what Jessica mentioned, helping complete those SERP camps, so the emissions reduction programs and community air monitoring programs in our current communities, and then also expanding benefits to other communities in need. So what the Air District is doing with expanding their programs throughout the Air District is great, and we're really supportive of it. The second part of the process that we're doing is kind of more a guidance document on the nuts and bolts of program implementation. So, and a main element of this revision process is getting early drafts of these parts out for early review to all stakeholders. So right now, part one, that overall vision for the next 5 years, is out for public review and comment, and I can pass that document on to you all through Jessica. And the second part is on the way, the kind of nuts and bolts of the guidance. We'll also be holding 3 workshops during July on the initial drafts. And once we get those dates solidified, I'll pass on to you all as well. And then all this will come together on September 27th, 2023, where our CAR board will consider the final draft for approval. And other than that, that are main updates from CARB.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and go, watching the clock here. If we can go ahead and move to the north again with members' comments or questions. We'll kind of keep them short if we can. Hearing nothing in the north, I'll move it to the south. Any questions or comments from the members of the board? Hearing none from the south.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You say $1 million for Stockton and $1 million for the other one. How many units can you get for $1 million?
About 5,000. It's about $200 per unit, and that includes shipping fees. We ship them directly to each of the residents and a replacement filter.
Okay, for example, if the population of Stockton is 520,000 or more, how do you determine who gets it in Stockton for as a big population?
Great question. So couple of things there. So technically this is not for all of Stockton. This is for just the AB 617 boundary of Stockton, which is more the South Stockton area. But to your point, definitely more than 5,000 people. It is actually 1 per household, and there are about 18,000 households in that area. So to your point, yes, it's not covering the whole area, but the idea here, especially working, this is through the CSC, the Community Steering Committee, trying to balance all of the funds that are available in their emissions reduction program. So the idea here is we're hoping to launch this and at least initially target the communities in most need. So we're working with the residents there to say, hey, let's reach out to the folks that we know definitely couldn't otherwise afford a $200 unit on their own. B, maybe folks that, there's a lot of folks up there that work with asthma mitigation projects. So folks that, that have chronic lung conditions like asthma, or C, folks that that are maybe in those sensitive receptor groups. So like with loss of young children or older folks. So that's our initial launch. It's possible that the Community Steering Committee wants to work to shift some of their available funding into that project a little bit more. But other projects that are included in their SERP include reducing actual emissions, right? So replacing trucks or cars or adding charging stations to the earlier discussion. So, and that actually same goes true for Fresno and for Shafter, how it was allocated.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead and bring it, if there's nothing else in the south, let's go ahead and come to the central DS. Any questions or comments here? Okay, hearing none, let's, members of the public in the south, do we have any questions or comments?
No comments in the south.
Anything from the north?
No public comment in the north.
From the central district?
There's no indication of any online comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Seeing none.
I'd like to thank our ARB member that helped today and Jessica that helped today, and thank you for that great report.
Thank you so much.
We'll move on to the next item. Number 12, Jamie Holt, Outreach and Communications.
Hi, everyone. I'll be very quick because a lot of what we're doing right now has to relate to some of what Jess just said. First of all, the Clean Air Room program is up and running. You all should have gotten a little heads up about it yesterday via email. We do plan to send out a press release tomorrow. We also have our zero emissions landscaping equipment program. This is a rebranding and a kind of redeveloping of what used to be our Clean Green Yard Machines commercial program. It is specifically targeted at getting a commercial landscapers funding so they can replace some of their gas-powered landscaping equipment. It used to have a funding cap. It no longer has a funding cap. I will tell you, in about the 7 years that we've been doing this program, the equipment has actually just become much more viable. We have a really heavy duty industrial grade commercial equipment that is electrical now. And through this program, folks can get quite a bit of funding to make that change. We're doing direct outreach to big agencies and some of the bigger businesses. And then we're doing a big slew of radio advertising that is going to be in Spanish, really hoping to reach some of our smaller mom and pop landscapers out there that may be doing, 20 yards a day or whatever it might be. So you might hear or see a little bit of that as well. We are headed into the summer, and with the summer, of course, comes wildfire season. Fortunately, wildfire season globally, or at least in the Northern Hemisphere, has started with a bang. I don't know if you all have seen the news about the Canadian wildfires, but there are parts of the U.S. right now that are being inundated with wildfire smoke. That's mostly kind of the Great Lakes area, upper Midwest. We're preparing for what might be a pretty significant wildfire season. It might start a little bit later just because of the amount of snow that's up there, but there is some conversation that the snow will lead to a pretty robust undergrowth, which means when we get to the October, November timeframe and all that snow finally is gone, there'll be more of a wildfire risk. So we're preparing, making sure that people are aware of how to kind of track air quality. And of course, our Clean Air Room program is a part of that kind of messaging and support that we're giving folks with regard to wildfires. So those are really the big three issues that we're looking at right now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Do we have any member comments or questions from the north? Any member comments or questions from the south? Any member comments or questions from the central? Any members of the public from the north?
No comment in the north.
Any members of the public from the south?
No public comment in the south.
Any public comment from the central district?
Seeing none and no indication of any online comments.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate the report.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the last item, or next to last item, item 13, CAC member comments. We've got a couple minutes here left before 12 o'clock. Do we have any member comments that anybody wants to state from the north?
This is Jose Delgadillo. At the last meeting, I was greeted with a very nice magazines, calendars. I presented this to the Merced County Association of Governments, Citizens Advisory Committee, and they were really pleased with this program, with this publication, but they never heard of them and they never see them. So what I'm going to do, I have a plan for the local school, at least the local Catholic school there, and some other public schools. Maybe they can have some competitions on how to write essays or print, just like this calendar. And for the elders, so they can check this. This lovely lady here, she already gave me books this morning, so they will be distributed to the people concerned.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else from the north? Any member comments from the south? Hearing none, any member comments from the central district? Okay, we don't need to go public on this item. Under item 14, normally Manny makes the reports to the governing board. Chris has volunteered to do that. And if he's unable to do it, he'll reach out to me unless somebody else would like to do that. Other than that, we've got that covered. And if there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.